How's it going, everybody? My name is Justin, and today I'm going to be talking about using podcasts to practice your listening. And then I'm going to give you guys 4 podcasts that I am currently listening to right now, and then a few that I'm going to start to listen to soon so that I can continue to improve my listening ability. So first I want to start by telling you guys why I use podcasts for listening, and that's basically because with my job, it is the easiest form of practicing listening that I can possibly do. And let me explain that. I'm a physical therapist and I treat patients in their homes, so I'm traveling to and from patients' homes all the time. So in between those patients, I am constantly listening to Spanish audio, especially podcasts. Every now and then I'll listen to music as well, but for the most part, I'm listening to podcasts because I want to understand conversational Spanish. Now, there are some positives and there are some negatives to using this type of method, but I want to share with you first the positives, and then I'll get into a little bit why it's not necessarily the best method. Positives: the availability of podcasts is ridiculous. There are so many out there, and there's so many different levels at which you can start to learn and practice your listening ability, and you can get them from all over the world. Therefore, you can listen to all different types of accents as well. And of course, the topics vary just as widely in Spanish as they do in English. So you can pretty much always find something that interests you, and that to me is one of the most important things, is does the content that you are listening to actually catch your attention? Now, obviously the negative to podcasts is that you're probably not going to have a transcript in front of you unless you go to some of these places' websites where they do offer a transcript. Many of them have a Patreon site where you have to pay to get the transcript, but there are some out there that they have the transcript for free for you, so sometimes it is available. Now, for me, I'm driving to and from everywhere, so I'm not necessarily going to have the transcript sitting right there in front of me, so I can't see the words. So then the negative, of course, is that because I can't see what I'm listening to, oftentimes I don't know all of the words. So if I'm being completely honest, for many of these podcasts, I probably understand maybe 50 to 60, maybe 70% of what the people are saying, but I still find that it's very helpful for me to be able to hear and understand the pacing of the language, to be able to distinguish words apart. Even if I don't understand it completely, I can still see kind of what is the pacing of the language, and I can start to get accustomed to that. And then eventually, as my vocabulary grows by other means, of course, then I'm going to be able to extract what those words actually are that I'm hearing. Now, for me and my level of Spanish, now almost 8 months into learning, I am at about a beginner to intermediate level. I'm kind of crossing that threshold a little bit from beginner to intermediate, and a lot of that crossing over into intermediate is because I've been doing a lot of listening, and I feel like I'm understanding a lot more of what's being said to me, or of what I'm hearing in audio. So I've chosen podcasts that are probably just a little bit above my current level, and if you understand the concept of comprehensible input, then that's exactly where you need to be in order to start to really improve your overall language learning ability. Now, of course, I don't have the opportunity to look up stuff that I don't understand, but I do find that I'm able to kind of put together meaning of things. Even if I don't understand everything completely, I'm able to put together meaning and get the big overall picture. Even if I don't have all the details, that's still pretty good for me. And that's part of the language learning process, is you have to be okay with not understanding every little thing, and just know that you will continue to improve, and over time you will start to learn and understand more and more and more. So let me give you 4 podcasts that I am currently listening to that I find to be very helpful and right around that intermediate, that crossing over from beginner to intermediate level. So I'm going to start with my 2 favorites. Number 1, the How to Spanish podcast, and this is with Ana and David, Ana y David, and they are from Mexico. And this podcast is all about culture, customs, and kind of way of life in Mexico. But they do it in such a way that it is actually helping you to increase your vocabulary. They're intentionally trying to teach you along the way, but it is really trying to teach you about the culture of Mexico. And David, he loves talking about food, which is always fun because he loves talking about tacos. They actually made, I think it was 2 or 3 episodes just about tacos. So they really do enjoy food, but they also compare it to different customs throughout the world. So they'll compare it to what people do in the United States, or they just put out an episode that was about the differences between Venezuela and Mexico. So they definitely are trying to kind of teach you the customs of Mexico, and then they try and compare it to other places as well. I really love this podcast. I love them, and the Spanish is very clear, which is helpful for me to be able to understand what I may not understand otherwise. And it's also very helpful to add this new vocabulary along the way. And my second favorite podcast that I like to listen to is Espanolistos, and this is with Maria and Nate. And Maria is from Colombia. She's 100% native Colombian, and Nate, her husband, is actually from the United States. He's from Texas. So it's very interesting because he is in the middle of trying to learn Spanish as well, and the conversations that they have in their podcast is oftentimes teaching a grammatical point, but it's also she's correcting Nate oftentimes in his errors, which I find to be extremely helpful because the errors that he makes as a native of the United States are very, very common errors that I make all the time and that other people from the United States make all the time as well. So to hear her make those corrections for him is actually very, very helpful on top of the actual lesson that they are presenting in every podcast. So I find this podcast to be extremely helpful in the language learning process. Now, the third one that I'm listening to is called Easy Spanish, and this has 2 different hosts. One of the hosts is Paulina, she's from Mexico, and the other is, what's his name, Juan, I think, and he is from Spain. And so you've got 2 different accents within the same podcast, which is actually really interesting and very helpful. It's very interesting to hear the different ways that people will say the same exact word. So I find this one to be very helpful for listening to 2 separate different accents at the same time. Plus, they're also talking about comparisons between Spain and Mexico in terms of like the customs and the culture and things like that. So they'll pick a topic that's kind of an everyday kind of topic, daily Spanish topics, daily conversational topics that you might come across in your day-to-day life, but they're doing it in Spanish, and they're doing it in relation to how is this understood or spoken about in Spain versus how is it understood or spoken about in Mexico. And I really, really enjoy it, and the conversations that they have are really great. And the last one that I've been listening to a lot is called the Intermediate Spanish Podcast, and this is just like it sounds. It is at about an intermediate level, and the host of the podcast is talking about a lot of everyday things, especially, and he'll even get into some political stuff or some social justice kind of things, which is interesting because those topics are very prevalent in our day right now. So it's interesting to listen to him and his perspective on those things. Now, the host, Cesar, is definitely from Spain. You can tell from his accent 100% that he is from Spain. And it's interesting to listen to that particular accent. Now, he also speaks very clearly because he is a Spanish teacher, and he knows that it's important to speak clearly, but he doesn't necessarily speak slow, so it's still at a conversational pace, but he does speak very clearly, which is very helpful. So I really enjoy the Intermediate Spanish Podcast because, like I said, it's at a level that's just a little bit above where I'm at right now, and I find it to be very helpful for kind of pushing the envelope and helping me to learn just a little bit more and understand grammatical structures and things of that sort much, much better. Now, I also want to talk about 4 podcasts that I just downloaded that I haven't even listened to a single episode yet that I want to start to listen to a little bit more. So let me tell you about those right now. Now the first one that I want to start to listen to is Español con Juan. And if you've seen Juan's YouTube channel, you know that he's very entertaining and that he's very, very helpful in helping me learn Spanish, and I know that he can be for you too. So I look forward to listening to his podcast very soon. The next one is called Doorway to Mexico, and I know nothing really about this other than the fact that it's from Mexico, and since Mexico is so close to the United States, I figure I should learn a little bit more about that. So I'm looking forward to diving into that one as well. And the next one that I want to start listening to is Podcast para Aprender Español. And this is with Spanish with Vicente. And Vicente is a guy from YouTube who has a channel, and I really enjoy his channel and some of the stuff that he talks about on there. Now he speaks really fast. He's from Spain and he speaks really fast, so this is a challenge for me. So I look forward to diving into his podcast as well. And then finally, I want to start listening to Unlimited Spanish. And I think this is only one of the titles that it goes by. And it is from this guy named Oscar Peles? No sé. But I think what he's trying to do in this podcast, and again, I haven't listened to it yet, so I don't know for sure, but he may be having you kind of repeat some things and practicing your speaking as well. So this is something that I need to practice as well, as listening and then speaking. So being able to answer questions quickly and not have to think so hard about it. So if I'm right about that, then I think this will be a very helpful podcast as well. Now, as many of you may already know, a lot of these channels already have YouTube channels. So these are fantastic ways to practice the listening when you don't have access to YouTube or able to watch video. But if you want more, then a lot of these podcasts have their own YouTube channels as well. And there's a lot more ways that you can practice your listening and comprehension, especially with the visual component that actually helps quite a lot. So that's how I'm practicing my listening and how I'm improving in my ability to hear the spoken language. And it's not the best method because I don't have a transcript in front of me necessarily or the visual cues or anything like that. But it is definitely helping me in integrating the stuff that I already do know and integrating the vocabulary that I'm learning from other places. So I find that this can be very helpful when you're just putzing along, when you're driving, when you're doing things like that. And since I'm doing a lot of driving, over 100 miles a day, it's a really good method for me to continue to practice my listening. So let me know if you have any questions or any other suggestions for podcasts. Go ahead and put that in the comments below. And also leave me comments about the types of videos that you guys want to see. I have plenty of ideas, but I want to know what you want to hear or what you are interested in learning about, especially from the perspective of a gringo who's just learning himself. So that's all for today, guys. Head on out there, keep learning, and I'll talk to you soon. Nos vemos.